One of the key kind of misconceptions that exists about legal tech is that you need to have it all and use it all, when really I think it's a matter of knowing exactly what your needs are and understanding that tech may actually may not necessarily be the answer. It could be, but it may not.
How do we integrate new tech in a way that improves the experience for our clients while also making it easier for us and our employees to serve our clients? Colin Levy is a legal technologist and former in-house attorney. This week, he joins us to explain how not all technology, even legal-specific technology, is appropriate for every practice. Now, tech can be a distraction and a roadblock to service if it's a bad fit or poorly integrated. We're all potentially subject to shiny object syndrome, so we need to make sure we're not falling for the latest gizmo that could potentially revolutionize our practice. Understanding your people and processes is the key to making the right choices about new tech. Consider not just the monetary cost of a tool, but the time cost and learning curve involved in the setup and integration, which can be deceivingly costly and distracting to your practice. There's so much to think about and absorb here, and it's more relevant than ever as firms continue to innovate and employ technology post-pandemic. Let's start the show. I'm John Strohmeyer, and this is the 5-Star Counsel Podcast. The market for legal services is shifting, and lawyers who don't adapt will be left behind. This podcast gives you a competitive edge in today's market by sharing the client service lessons you probably didn't learn in law school or in law practice. Let's start the show. Hey 5-Star listeners, before we start, I want to tell you about our amazing sponsor, Smith AI. Smith AI is a virtual receptionist service for small businesses with a specialty in working with solo and small law firms. I signed up with them within weeks of starting my firm because they are affordable for even the smallest solo practice. Their friendly receptionists respond to potential clients in Spanish or English, screen and schedule new leads, and can even take payments. And now they're answering calls 24 hours a day. So even when you're asleep, they're still working. Even beyond the phone, they've got live agents and chatbots ready to capture leads on your website, by text, and by Facebook Messenger. Smith's friendly gatekeepers can staff your front lines so you can work uninterrupted. You can finally have the peace of mind that while you're working, you're not missing out on future work. Plans start at just $70 a month for calls and $100 a month for chats. Smith AI is offering a free trial, and our podcast listeners get an extra $100 discount code with promo code 5-STAR. That's FIVESTAR. Sign up and learn more at www.smith.ai. Don't let another day go by. Try Smith AI. Hey, Colin, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Well, Colin, I had you in because you write and speak on legal tech so much that I wanted to get your opinion on, starting with kind of the idea of there's so much tech out there, there's so many options, and we all have different practices. How can we best integrate all of those different tech tools into our practice so that we can ultimately make things better and easier, not just for our clients, but also for the lawyers who own the firm, as well as how do we make it better for our employees who are the front lines of delivering service to our clients?
Right, and I appreciate that. I think one of the key kind of misconceptions that exists about legal tech is that you need to have it all and use it all, when really I think it's a matter of knowing exactly what your needs are and understanding that tech may actually may not necessarily be the answer. It could be, but it may not. And in addition, there are a lot of different areas of legal tech. There's kind of litigation, there's document management, there's contract management, there's matter management, workflow, intake. There are a lot of different areas. So, and you don't need to be an expert in all of them. You just need to understand and be aware that there are likely tools that could possibly be of help to you, but you need to know what you need help with first. And that's really my approach when talking about legal tech with folks, is getting them to understand that you don't need to be overwhelmed by it, because you don't need to be going after every single piece of tech that is out there. You really need to just start with understanding your issues and using those issues to guide you with regards to the type of tech that is out there that could possibly help you.
Wow. So, I agree. It seems like what you're saying is we need to go in and figure out what works for us and not, kind of obviously what works for us not what works for our buddy who has a practice that's in PI when, for me, as an example, I'm in estate planning and that probably won't work for me.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, you could be in, suppose you're a litigator and you're dealing with cases, you wouldn't necessarily need, a contract management system because you're not dealing with contracts, you're dealing with litigation matters. So perhaps a better tool would be one that perhaps could give you some insight into the probability of you winning that case, or perhaps how costly a case could be depending on what it is. So you really have to kind of understand the area you're in and not necessarily what your buddy is doing, because as we all likely know, lawyers always kind of like to keep up with what other lawyers are doing, but that can sometimes be to our disservice because they may not be doing what we're doing. And we need to really focus on ourselves and what best is best for ourselves, and more importantly, what's best for our clients.
Right. I mean, I think of it is now 2021. When I went to Tech Show in 2020, just wandering around the floor, looking at the different service providers, I remember looking at, oh, well, here are all these other client management systems. I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe there's something in here for me. But just going through and knowing how I operate and what I need from that back end, there were some great new features and, oh, we've got this whiz bang feature, or we can do communication this way. But looking at it and saying, well, that's not going to work with how we do things currently. It's not going to make it necessarily easier, even if there is this kind of distant goal of, new tech will make it easier. We can't forget we're going to have adoption costs, or, the cost of learning this new thing, migrating costs. So it's no small thing to just kind of get inspired at Tech Show and then, plunk down your credit card, and now you've created problems for almost everybody.
Right, exactly. I think there often is this tendency to solve for a problem that doesn't exist, or have a solution in search of a problem, when really, if you're going to be looking at tech tools at all, you really want to start with two things. You want to start with your people, and you want to start with your processes. You need to understand how your people operate. You need to understand what they're using, why they're using the tools that they are, and their level of savviness and interest in tech, because likely you're not going to be the only one using these tools. You need to understand how your users use their existing tools to get them and see potentially if there could be a tool that they would be all open to be using that could better help them serve whomever they're seeking to serve. And also, you really want to look at the existing processes you have in place, because if you don't understand how your processes work right now, you're really doing yourself a disservice, and also kind of flying blind when you're looking at tech solutions. Because if you don't know your existing process, it's really hard to determine how a future tech tool is going to fit into that process. Which is why I always kind of repeat this mantra: people, process, and tech. I really start with people and process first, because it's all too easy, as you mentioned, kind of in your question, to be seduced by sort of shiny tech and features that sound wonderful and ostensibly could solve a lot of the issues that you may be having, when you may not even have those issues to begin with.
Right. I mean, I was looking at and got pitched on something recently that was a way of better communicating with clients. And it would be an app that it would be on every client's phone. We use that as our portal. There we are, front and center. The clients can't miss us. But this was something that was built out as more of a litigation tool. And kind of ultimately, we aren't moving forward on it right now because it didn't fit in with kind of how we work and the cadence that we work on our clients with. And the only way that we could have really sussed that out, it took 2 phone calls plus me talking with my operations guy before it was like, oh, this is shiny. It does look neat, but it doesn't fit in. And it's actually going to, it may make some marginal benefit, but not at the cost of learning it and figuring it out and not really having any other way around it.
Right. And that speaks to another one of these issues that I think often goes overlooked, which is not just the actual monetary cost of a tool, but the cost of implementing it and getting up to speed and getting it to be used in your office. Because I think a lot of folks kind of go in thinking that this tool they're going to be using will automatically just work perfectly the minute that they buy it and set it up. When a lot of these tools, especially ones that rely on sort of machine learning or other subsets of AI, really rely on using data. And so you have to feed these tools data before they can actually be useful to you. But a lot of that gets overlooked or kind of ignored, I think, during the buying process when it really shouldn't be, because that is a key part of the process. And what ends up happening sometimes is you buy a tool and then you spend months and months getting up to speed. And those months and months you're spending getting up to speed is costing you because you're not benefiting from the use of the tool because you're still getting up to speed. And you have to, I think, really take that into account before you start investing in any of these tools.
Right. And so when you look at new tools and new tech, is there a framework that you've got? I mean, we've already talked about like knowing how you're going to integrate it. You've got to have your process down. What are some of the things that we can look at in terms of figuring out do our processes even are they even ready to apply additional tech, or are we going to waste our time on it?
Right. So part of, I think, the process there involves doing a deep dive into your processes and understanding kind of where the pain points are. And if those pain points are pain points caused by the people, caused by the process itself, or are just an issue that's the result of just because those are the tools you have and you can't do better than that because of the tools that you have. So I think it really comes down to understanding and perhaps in some ways seeing if you can optimize your processes as much as possible before going down the tech route because of the costs involved, both monetary and time wise. So I really think that that's kind of one way to look at it. Another way as well, I would say, is when you're looking at tech is you want to make sure that you've got the support in buying, both literally and figuratively, from the people that you're working with to pursue this tech, because you really want to make sure that it fits into your corporate culture, fits into your processes, and it fits into sort of how you operate and how you work best. Because while disruption is certainly sometimes a good thing, I think, in a lot of legal operations and the way a lot of folks work, it doesn't always need to be throwing out the baby with the bathwater. It sometimes can be helpful to just start small and build off of those small successes, which sometimes may involve tech or sometimes may not.
So, Colin, when I hear you say pain points, it makes me think of two things. First, there's the obvious way of we're doing something and it's not working as well as we'd want. But there's the more subtle version of we all have some hopefully we have a higher value, our higher aspired service level that we're trying to get to with our clients and with our staff. And that pain point may not be that it's not working, but it's not working as well as it should. So as an example from my practice, typically I'm chasing my clients to try and get them to approve drafts, approve documents, basically move the process forward. We've set up processes. We know, we'll send documents. My paralegal's job is then to follow up, usually on an every other week basis, to just keep pinging them to provide answers, to let us know if they've got questions. The problem is, phone calls, texts, and emails, even though we're doing it that way, the pain point is clients want a result from us. They would like to know that at the end of their time working with us, they have a plan in place that isn't going to leave a mess for their clients. And here we are saying, here's the work you need to do. If you do it, we could get you there. And they've, unfortunately lost the plot on this. So making it as easy as possible. The pain point is we need them to move forward because it helps everybody to be done with the work. So what we've been experimenting with is a new thing called Video Ask from the folks at Typeform, where you don't have to, worry about typing out an email. You can send back either video or audio to us to correspond with questions or comments or just tweaks on your plan. And that's ultimately what I hear saying, we know what the process was. We send you documents and then my paralegal has, her weekly pinging list. We know that everybody here inside the law firm would like this done and clients have paid for it. So we know they would like it done. It's now what's the tool that's going to make this faster and easier for them?
Right. And I think that's a great way to look at it, because oftentimes the pain points you're having in a process are not necessarily ones for yourself that are pain points, but pain points that are perceived to be as such by your clients in terms of, all right, well, I'm expecting this from my lawyer, I don't understand why this is taking so long, why they're not understanding this request that I have. So the tool that you just mentioned, using video rather than email, I think is great, because oftentimes, as we all know, sometimes when we're communicating through a certain means, whether it's email or what have you, it sometimes can get misinterpreted. And if we can send a video instead, that way we can read more into what the person is saying in terms of seeing their body language, seeing their tone, seeing what kind of is bothering them, which may or may not be expressed in words when they're speaking or writing. So, I do think that kind of understanding pain points in that sort of holistic way, I think can be really important when you're looking at tools to help your practice be better and allow you to be more productive and focus your time better on more higher level strategic things rather than on these sort of minutia that take time, but ultimately your client doesn't really care too much about and is really your problem and not theirs.
Right, because the clients are coming to us to, solve some problem. They want a needle moved one way or another in their life. If they didn't, they weren't just coming to us to, shower us with riches and in exchange for kind of a liberal application of billable hours. And so if we can keep that in mind, that the clients are here to achieve some result, get me out of jail, get me divorced, but we keep that in mind, that's what we're here for. We want to make sure that we're focused on that and how we can get clients to their desired end state, not just our kind of short-sighted end state of get my bills paid.
Right. And so that's, I think, it speaks to, I think, a larger problem of the legal profession overall, that historically it's been very inward focused. It's been focused on the lawyers themselves and not on the clients, or I would argue on the customers really of legal services. And ultimately, whatever tools you're using are not just about you and you being necessarily better at what you do, although that is certainly an important part of it. It's ultimately about making your clients happier and getting them the services that they need quicker, more affordably, and more attuned to their needs. Because oftentimes, when I've been a client, I will get back some kind of long-winded legal analysis from the lawyer. And if I want to read that, I'd go look at a law journal and read one of those articles, when really what I want is, all right, I'm at step A. I want to get to B. How do I get there? I don't know how. That's why I'm asking for your help.
Right. And if we're the ones who have done this before, even if it's some new wrinkle on an issue that we haven't seen, like, oh, you wrote this in your document, I haven't necessarily seen that before, I'll need to go figure it out. But at least presenting yourself as the person who is, I've seen 98% of this, and the small little 2% word order is the thing I haven't. That's the difference versus, well, I haven't seen a will ever before, and now it's time to go to probate. So we need to start, let me crack open the estates code and start figuring this out. Show that you've been there. And also, again, for you, making it easy. Yes, we may need to have our full legal analysis in there, but being able to boil it down to clients so that they can reasonably understand it. For me, as somebody who deals with tax, I already know most lawyers are just going to kind of roll their eyes and say, well, no numbers, please. But I've got to be able to reduce a lot of choices down to, we can do this and this is your tax result, or we can do this and this is your tax result. Which one would you like?
Right, exactly. And that's kind of some of the beauty and power that lies in a lot of these legal tech tools that exist out there. For example, you can look at litigation prediction tools, which you can use as a lawyer to help tell your client, all right, so you've got this case, if we go to trial, the likelihood of succeeding is this percentage, likelihood of not succeeding is this percentage, and that in turn can help dictate how much it's going to cost, and that in turn can help dictate whether the strategy is to go forward with the case or to settle or withdraw it or what have you. And so really, I think it boils down to being able to use data to drive your decision making with regards to some of these legal tasks, because the business world by and large operates on data, operates on quantifiable results and metrics. And lawyers, I think, to operate in this century and beyond, need to be operating in that same world with those same kinds of dynamics and be able to speak fluently what I would call the language of business, which in some part is quantitative. And that's where tech can help provide that degree of literacy that your clients are looking for, so that they can not read a wall of text, but see a couple of numbers, and that can inform them as to what they want to do. And then they can tell you what they want to do.
No, I think this gets back to something we were talking about before we hit record of experimentation. Lawyers don't like making mistakes. The problem is that's a very good habit only in the limited context of providing legal services. Once you get beyond those legal services, the law firm still does things that are not provide legal services. Running payroll, for example, doing marketing and advertising, onboarding, like those are obviously inherently tied. But if you're not experimenting, kind of quantifying what has happened and seeing where that gets you, this is what we need to know. I mean, you've got to get the data, and to get data, it also does mean you've got to have a process so you can have some structured results, so you're not just comparing seemingly random shots.
Right. And I think that speaks to another kind of problem that I see within sort of the historical nature of the legal profession, which is that lawyers have been taught to kind of just be know-it-alls, know it all, be in control of everything, don't take risks, don't experiment, just go with what you know because anything else is not trustworthy. And in today's world, with the dynamics that exist, you have to be willing to experiment and be willing to learn, be willing to grow, be willing to listen to others and take their perspectives to heart. And I think a lot of kind of what drives legal tech, and what frankly drives also innovation as well, is this willingness to experiment and learn and grow and challenge yourself. Because if we don't challenge ourselves, we're not going to grow. And if we're not going to grow, we're not going to be able to provide the best service to our clients because our clients are growing. They're growing their businesses. They're learning new things. They're moving forward with things regardless of whether we're on board with them or not. And we need to be able to keep up with the pace at which they're operating.
Yeah, I like that. So, you hit on a few good things and kind of tying it back together. Lawyers don't like experimenting. They like doing the same thing everybody else or every other lawyer has done. I mean, just go look at 99% of lawyer websites. They're virtually identical. How then, Colin, can we start? What are the baby steps for those who are willing but not yet ready to start experimenting? What are those small experiments we can start running?
So the small experiments start with kind of looking at kind of how you're doing something. Could be something mundane and time consuming. That would probably be a good place to start and see what you can do to perhaps make it less time consuming, because ultimately that will make you be more productive and also perhaps make your client happier because they're paying less for what they're trying to get because you're spending less time providing them with what they need. So, if you can start with something small, try to make a little tweak, see what happens. Doesn't cost you too much, doesn't cost you too much in time or whatever, because it has to get done. And it's not a super risky thing to do. It's just something you always have to do that's fairly routine. And then you can experiment and learn and use those small successes as ways to build your confidence and then grow and develop from there. I don't think we always need to be shooting for the stars here when it comes to innovating or using tech. We really, I think, often are best when we're starting small, using small successes to build a foundation to move forward.
Right. And I mean, I can hear the hourly billers now, but if we make things faster, we can't bill for those things. There's the other side of it of if you can make it faster, you probably have the ethical obligation to make it faster and not be charging for it.
Right. So a couple things there. Number one, don't get me started on the bill per hour model because I think it rewards inefficiency and promotes bad incentives and bad behaviors that we as the clients all pay for. Literally, we pay for. Two, I think that there's a reason why 39 states plus, at least in this country, have adopted the rule of tech competence, requiring that lawyers be aware of the risks and benefits of relevant technology to their practice because as lawyers, we have an ethical duty to best serve our clients, and technology can often help us do that. And we now, at least in those 39 states that have adopted that rule, have an ethical duty to make sure that we're doing that through being aware of the technology that can help us get there.
Right. I mean, I remember years ago when I was still at a firm that exclusively did hourly billing, I figured out a way to use a tool that, got nominal acceptance from the IT department to use Text Expander in my computer just to enter my own time. That all the partners wanted me to handwrite my time, hand the sheets over to my assistant. My assistant would type it up. I would then review it for accuracy, correct any errors, hand it back. At the end of the month, they would print off the bills and send them over to me. I mean, just a monumental waste of everybody's time. And so I got it to where, I was typing in things like TCT for telephone call to, and it would prompt me for a name. And then I'd have the 10 most common words that I used in phone calls followed up, and then like work following up on same. And it took me 15 seconds to enter that time instead of, I've got garbage handwriting and just knowing I don't need to do that anymore. Instead of even coming up with some shorthand, it was all in me. It was programmed into the computer. I only had to know how to type TCT.
Right. And that's a great example of putting exactly what I just said into practice. I mean, before I became a lawyer, I worked for a big firm in New York, and the bane of as a paralegal, and the bane of my existence was entering time into this god awful timekeeping system. And I would get berated if I ever dared make an error in this timekeeping system. And needless to say, I made a fair number of errors because I didn't like doing it, and it was really painful and just made me stay at the office even later than I already was. And so that is just a kind of a prime example of, I think, something that clients hate and that lawyers are notorious for, is wasting time on these sort of mundane, stupid, well, not stupid, but mundane tasks that ultimately don't really serve anyone but the lawyers themselves. And clients don't really care what the lawyers have to do for themselves. What they're looking for are results. And so whatever you can do to best get them the results in a cheap and accessible way, that's ultimately what I think the lawyer's task is.
Right. And I would just, to pull it together, clients aren't paying for us to expend our time, filling out the forms if we can remember, oh, well, I'm going to save the PDF so that this box that I always tick is ticked off before I open it. I mean, even beyond pricing, it's, clients aren't necessarily always looking for the cheap option. There are reasons to have higher prices. That's a separate upcoming episode just on pricing. But knowing that they're not going to get dinged and you're being used to the best extent that you can, because there's no really benefit to having me start from a blank page to type up your will if I've got 98% of it and I'm making the few tweaks to get us across the finish line.
Right. And that's exactly what a client is looking for. If I'm looking for someone to kind of draft up a will or estate, my assumption is that they're going to be using a template so that they're not starting from scratch and billing me for them to start from scratch. They're actually using something that is fairly aligned with what I'm looking for and then making a few tweaks to it. And this boils down to kind of, I think, the power of tech and making the legal profession making legal services rather, be more accessible and be less costly, frankly, for clients, because that's been a huge issue with the legal profession, has been the cost of services, not just knowing what services you need, but also coming up with the money to pay for them.
Right. I mean, I had an experience with a new client this week who ended up getting, mid-teens thousand bill from a prior attorney and didn't have finished documents and had no end in sight. It was the sort of thing of, this client didn't know what was going on and, was fairly shocked to know, we're not done and this is the first amount of money they've been asked for. That didn't help them. The client didn't get the needle moved for himself. Where's the benefit? And, to what ends have been served?
Yeah, exactly. That type of situation, I'll be blunt. That would just piss me off. It would infuriate me, as I'm sure it would infuriate anyone. It's really, I think, ridiculous for a lawyer to be charging someone, a boatload of money and then saying, oh yeah, so here's, the bill halfway through and there's still more work to be done. When I get something back from a lawyer, I'm ideally looking for something that's pretty damn close to the end point. Yeah, it's probably going to need some tweaks here and there and probably going to need a few revisions, but I'm not looking for kind of like a midway draft. You've got other people to run drafts by. I'm not looking for that. I'm looking for something that actually is usable, understandable, and I can work off of. And I'm also not looking to pay through the roof for it because I shouldn't have to. There are tools out there that can help you achieve these things quicker. And, the client is looking for two things. They're looking for something that can be done fairly quickly, fairly expensively, and attuned to what their needs are. And I think tech and innovation together can help lawyers best meet the needs as outlined.
Colin, I think that's a great place to close this down. Where can people find you?
So they can find me all over social media. I'm on Twitter at @CLevy_law. I'm on LinkedIn under my name. I'm also located, I have a website, colinsLevy.com, where I operate a blog where I interview a lot of leaders in the space of legal tech and legal innovation. So I'm all over the place and happy to be connected with anyone who wishes to be connected with me.
Great. We will make sure and include links to that in the show notes. Colin, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thanks so much for listening. You can find more info on us and get your free white paper on client service at 5starcounsel.com. You can get in touch with me at john@5starcounsel.com. If you enjoyed the podcast, please subscribe wherever fine podcasts are found and leave us a review wherever you can.